Good evening, and welcome to the College of San Mateo. Tonight you're in for a treat. This is really an all-star panel up here this evening, so what you need to do to get ready to get your business funded, you're going to find out about tonight and have many of your questions answered. My name is Robert Schaffner, and I'm a professor here at College of San Mateo, as well as the director of the San Mateo County Small Business Development Center. And so some of you may say, well, what's an SBDC and what does the Small Business Development Center do? We help businesses thrive and survive and grow and develop. And just a little bit about this district that we're housed in. Over the last 2 years, 682 businesses received one-on-one counseling from us. An initial engagement of 8 hours. If you had to go on the outside to get that, you'd probably spend about $3,000 to $4,000. It's free of charge to you because we put your taxpayer dollars to work. We get funded in part by the SBA, and we also get funded by our host, which is the Community College District. We provided 4,300 hours of advising. We had 2,800 people attend SBDC events over that course of time, 553 new jobs created, 46 new businesses created. We provided access to capital to the tune of $45.1 million. And we had new taxable revenue or sales increases for businesses of $13.6 million. So we're pretty effective at what we do. To put that in perspective for the state, last year alone, we provided access to capital of $787 million. Well on our way to $1 billion a year in access to capital, both venture funding, equity funding, as well as conventional lending. I want to recognize a few people this evening. One, this event wouldn't be possible without doing what's matters for jobs in the economy. And Gabriela Sapp is here, who's the Deputy Sector Navigator for the Southwest Bay Area. She is working with all of the college campuses and other providers to help make events like this happen. So Gabriela, thank you very much. I want to recognize all the students in the room. If you're students, you wave your hands. So they're really our future. They're the ones that are going to come up with the next great ideas and whatever. So thank you for coming this evening. And I also have the pleasure of being the advisor for the business club here at the College of San Mateo. And so I'd like to have the club treasurer come up to say a few words. Luke, are you here?
Okay. I'm just going to take this. So hello, my name is Luke Awad. I'm the current treasurer of the College San Mateo Business Club. So pretty much we're a club on campus run by students with the help of our great advisors. In the past, we have done several great things, such as the Innovators Forum, which was similar setup like this with many businesses that the students actually went and marketed and networked with to bring here so we could talk to them and get more students involved in terms of business and networking and what that looks like. We have also done pop-up businesses on campus, as well as the semi-annual business plan competition on campus in collaboration with the Small Business Development Center. We meet in Building 14, room 206 on Thursdays from 1 to 2 if you are interested in joining. We love to have more members, more ideas, more people, and whatever you're interested in business or not, we'd love to have you and create more things on campus. I appreciate Robert for allowing me to speak in this time, and I look forward to meeting more of you here on out. That's pretty much. Thank you.
Good job. All right, we've done many events over the years, but what's been a constant for the SBDC since we got started here is a great partner. And obviously it takes great partners to do anything. But we've got a great partner in Idea to IPO. How many of you have heard of that organization? So I think a few of you have. I'm going to let Rob Law will come up and talk about his organization, but suffice it to say, I appreciate all his support and everything he does to help the entrepreneurial community in the Bay Area. Rob.
Well, I'll sum it up in 10 words. Idea IPO is the most active, most prolific startup event organization in Silicon Valley. Bar none, that's 12 words. In any case, we have events multiple times a week from San Jose to San Francisco. Check out all the events on our calendar, ideatoipo.com. In fact, we have a great event tomorrow. It's tomorrow the 27th at Pillsbury Law Firm in Palo Alto. We have a venture capital panel that'll be talking about funding for AR, VR startups. In this room, May 30th, we have a panel on the latest innovations in AI. So check out all the details, again, on our site, ideatoipo.com. So we're honored and privileged to be collaborating with the College of San Mateo and the Small Business Development Center. We have many partners ourselves that help us do what we do, and some of them are here tonight. I'd like to have them come up and say a few words. Let's hear it for Unibui and Payom.
Hello, everyone. My name is Payam. I'm the CFO and co-founder of Unibui, and we are a student business for students. So if you're a student in the room, please just go over to our stand. We would love to talk to you and get some feedback. We want to save you guys time and money, and we want to get rid of bulletin boards from the world. So that's what we do. Thank you.
Yeah, next up we have Taylor from IoT World.
Hello, can you hear me? So I'm representing IoT World. It's coming up in 3 weeks at Santa Clara Convention Center. It's all about IoT. So if you are looking to either look at companies who are showcasing or you want to learn more about IoT, come see me for more info. And if you're a startup who wants to showcase, we have a special program for you guys to participate in. Thank you.
Yeah, next up we have Mike from CTO 911.
Does it come up?
Hi, everyone. My name is Mike with CTO 911. I offer consulting services for entrepreneurs here in Silicon Valley. I help them turn their vision, their business vision, into reality by creating software for them, whether you're building a chat application, an AI-based application, or enterprise-level B2B marketplaces. I can help you accomplish that with my badass team. So I basically consult with you to figure out what your needs are and what you want to build, and then based on that information, I'll create the framework and the platform and the tools, and also help you manage the entire process end to end. So if you're interested or want to learn more about it, please come over to my table and talk to me. All right, enjoy the event.
Yeah, next up we have Natalie from NCP Partners.
Hello, my name is Natalie Papani. I'm a partner with NCP Advisory Partners. My firm is a public accounting, tax, and advisory and consulting firm located in Sunnyvale. And my firm provides consulting and advisory, tax, and accounting services to growth-driven small businesses throughout the San Francisco Peninsula, Silicon Valley region. If you have any needs, please stop by. I'd love to help.
Okay, we have a robust YouTube channel, youtube.com/ideatoipo, and we've documented many of our events, and this content is a rich, valuable resource that's available for everybody to use. Our partner in this endeavor is Tim Jeggers of Jeggers Films.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you for being here tonight, everybody. I'm Tim Jeggers. I operate Jeggers Films. That's my production company, if you didn't put that together already. I do video production predominantly, started doing weddings, shifted into covering events like this, helping out Robert in the SBDC tonight, and I do all kinds of other projects. So if any of that sounds interesting, or if you had questions about multimedia in general, I'd be more than happy to get into a convo. So thank you for coming again. I'm going to go ahead and pass it back to Robert.
I want to mention that we need help to execute all our events. So if you're a student, even if you're not a student, you're welcome to volunteer for our events. You'll meet great investors, speakers, entrepreneurs. You'll get lots of free food. So if you're interested in being a volunteer at our events, come see me later. I also want to mention that we're going to have a raffle later on tonight. It's roughly going to be about 8:30 p.m. at the end of the formal program. Everyone's eligible, including our panel. So, anyway, stick around till 8:30. You must be present to win. So with that, I'm going to pass it back to Robert.
All right, on with the program. I'm going to introduce our moderator for the evening, Jerry Bargnano, who is the director of the Tech Futures Group, which is over here to the left. The Tech Future Group is associated with the Small Business Development Centers for Northern California. And I'm going to just say Tech Futures Group is very effective at what they do. I think last year it was 61 million? A little bit less than that, but close to it, in providing access to funding for the businesses that they work with. They have an expert staff of advisors that have started businesses, are running businesses right now, so you really get very good advice. With that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Jerry.
Thanks, Robert, and thank you all for coming. Let me just tell you really briefly what the Tech Futures Group is, and then I'll give you an outline of what we hope to do today. So Tech Futures Group is a nonprofit. We provide free business advice to tech companies. We focus on the ones in the Bay Area. Our services are free, just like SBDC. We don't take equity, and we don't accept cash. So the way it works is you apply to Tech Future Group. If we like what we see, we don't accept everybody, then we would pair you up with a senior advisor, an entrepreneur in residence. These are serial entrepreneurs who've had a good exit or two, and they provide strategic business advice. And then they'll bring in our specialty advisors as needed. Patent attorneys will help with patent issues, will help explain what you need to do there. There's folks who do manufacturing. There's somebody who will help with getting government grants. We've been very, very successful with government grants. These are non-dilutive funding. We also have somebody who'll build a financial model so that you know how you're going to make money, and so you're prepared for pitches to VCs, and we do help with that as well. We're measured on three things: jobs, revenue, and the most important is capital infusion, so we help you raise money. We were founded in 2012. Our companies have raised about $123 million in that period. We've raised over 1,300 jobs, so we've done very, very well. Just take a look at techfuturesgroup.org. Now let me tell you what we're going to do today. We're going to have the panel introduce themselves, so I'll throw the ball to the panel and they'll spend 30 seconds introducing themselves. And then what I want to do is, since this whole talk is about equity investing, or raising equity, what I'm going to do is do two different case studies and sort of bring you through some of the issues you have to worry about, who you would go after for equity funding at whatever stage of the business you're in. One will be a tech business and one will be a non-tech business, because there's significant differences between the two. It'll be about an hour, maybe a little bit more, and then it'll be about half an hour for questions. Okay? Bill?
Thanks, Jerry, Hank, and thanks to everyone and SBDC for sponsoring this. My name is Bill Reichert, and I'm the managing director of Garage Technology Ventures. Garage is a seed and early stage venture capital firm based here in Silicon Valley. Two guys in a garage, or two gals in a garage, or a guy and a gal in a garage. That was the big idea. We've evolved several times since the original idea as the venture ecosystem has evolved, and I guess we'll talk about those evolutions in the venture ecosystem during the conversation this morning. But I just wanted to comment that you can always tell when you're at a college. How can you tell when you're at a college? Because the last two rows are packed, and the front two rows are not even half full. There's an interesting sociology that happens at college. You think we're not going to call on you because you're in the back row. Is that why? So in any case, it is just interesting. What you notice is, depending on the blend between students and entrepreneurs, not necessarily that they're exclusive, when you're in an intensely entrepreneurial group, they're all at the front. When you're an intensely student group, they're all at the back. Why is that happens? But we'll see. But in any case, thanks.
Okay.
Thanks for inviting us here.
All right. Thank you, Bill, for helping explain that to all of us, especially the students in the back. So my name is Ephraim Lindenbaum. I'm a managing director of Advanced Ventures, and I'm actually a recovering entrepreneur myself, so I probably would have sat right up here up front. And I started a company in Silicon Valley, exited in the first .com boom, which the people in the back won't remember. Started Advanced Ventures in 1999, and we've been investing ever since. We're just wrapping up our third fund, and we invest across a number of core categories: financial technology, health technology, food and agriculture. And then we hatch that against a number of key technologies: big data, AI, analytics, connected device, and now what we call sustainability. So that's a little background on us.
I'm Han Wong, and I have not yet recovered from being an entrepreneur. So during my free time, I work with Jerry on the Tech Futures Group as an advisor. So if you apply to the program, we would love to work with you on your needs in terms of, go-to-market, financial modeling, what do you have to do to get funding, and et cetera. So there's a lot of things that we can provide help on. But other than that, when I'm not working with the Tech Futures Group, I am working with various startups on my own company, or work with other entrepreneurs to bring their company together. Had my first startup in 1991, so it's been a long time.
Hi, my name is David Goslin. I'm a partner and CPA at DBB McKinnon. I'm here to talk about equity crowdfunding, which is a change in the securities law that's changed 80 years of securities laws and created a democratization in finance. And Bill, just to make a point, I had a professor in college one time that said, be careful about the people in the front because they'll be your best employees someday. Be careful of the people in the middle because they'll be your best manager someday. But be particularly careful about the people in the back because they'll be your boss someday.
I like that. It's hard to follow, and I don't have a funny story like that. I'm Roger Royce. I'm the founder of the Royce Law Firm. We're a business, corporate, and tax firm, about 30 lawyers in Silicon Valley. I've been out here in the Valley since the early 90s. I came here tonight, and I find that I have two of my former clients on the panel here, so it tells you how long I've been around. I'm not saying who they are, though. You live long enough, you meet everybody. We represent technology startups primarily, and we're full service. We do everything technology companies need, and if you've been to Rob's events, you've probably seen us before, because like Rob, we try to create a real community among startup entrepreneurs that includes a vast network of people that help each other. And I am looking forward to what I'm going to learn tonight listening to these smart people.
Thank you, guys. Okay, so before I start with the case study, let me just give you sort of an overview or framework in which to think about a lot of this stuff. If you think of a spectrum of equity in terms of source and size of funding, it's very linked to where you are in the company. Okay, so if you're just starting a company, all you have is an idea. You're likely to get money from friends and family. You're going to get maybe some from an accelerator. Crowdfunding will be in there as you get a little bit more mature, if you can deliver the product or if you can show some traction. And then much later, you'll get angel investors, angel groups, or micro VCs, and then finally venture capital. And the amounts go from, say 25,000 for friends and family, maybe 50, all the way to millions when you get to VC. So if you don't have anything, it's very hard to jump to a VC. So we're going to go through that sort of equity spectrum that is actually a good way to sort of put the framework around it. So now I'm going to give two cases, but I'm going to give you one case now. We'll talk about it for a while. I do want you to think about questions, and we'll take questions at the end. So I hope that you'll have some. So the first case is a situation where an individual lost their dog. It was a mutt, very distinctive looking mutt. And they were so sorry that they wanted to have a little statue of their mutt. Now, you may laugh, but people are actually doing this. So what this individual has done is created the idea that if the owner would take a video, walk around the dog, taking just a video with their phone, upload the video to this individual or to his company, they would take that video and turn it into a CAD model that would then go to a 3D printer and would print the statue of the dog. Okay, so that's the idea that they had. It's just one individual at this point. It's a student. It was a young person who has some technical abilities, but not enough to get this all the way done. So let's start with Roger. Roger, what are the issues, the legal issues, someone at that stage of the business has to worry about?
Well, the very first thing for your typical tech startup, well, it's three things. It's money, it's people, and it's technology. So the first question is going to be, what sort of entity do you need? And you want to form an entity to get started because you need a vehicle that can collect your technology. As odd as that one sounds, you still need a vehicle to collect all that, and you also need a vehicle to divide up equity among the founders. Does your company have co-founders? I didn't catch that part.
Not yet, but the plan is to have some.
Okay, and thirdly, you want something to limit the liability in the extremely unlikely event that this does not become the next big unicorn. You want to stop liability at the company level. So that's issue number one. We could talk all night about this. In fact, I got whole presentations. But I'm gonna pause on that one because this is where there's not enough thought that really goes into this decision a lot of times. People do the knee-jerk thing and they go online and buy a kit and form a company, and then they run off to talk to the investors. And I think a little more thought ought to go into that. But definitely having a company is better than not having anything. Of course, then the next stop is going to be to the accountant's office, I suspect.
So in terms of the corporate structure, there's not, obviously the two main ones are pass-through LLC type or a C Corp. Given that this individual hopes to raise money, what would you recommend for them?
Well, I know what you want me to say. I know you. So you want me to say Delaware C Corporation because that's what most startup companies are, and I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to just jump to that conclusion.
Don't give us the LLC talk.
That's, because it just takes a little more thought. So let me just back up. So one of my personality flaws is that I'm very active with the American Bar Association. I'm on this listserv for the business law section. And some lawyer threw out this question about a month ago. It said, hey, I'm forming a new tech startup. Should I be an LLC or should I be a corporation? And the responses that came back from all over the country, I had my secretary print them out because I wanted to read them. It was this high of emails. And they're all different opinions, and they were strongly held opinions. There were people that said, if you do anything other than an LLC, it's malpractice. There were people from Silicon Valley that said, if you do anything other than a Delaware C Corporation, you don't know what the hell you're doing. So there's very strong opinions, but it's actually a more subtle sort of decision, and I would just invite you to kind of take a step back, pause, and consider what your exit might be before you form the company, because you might not be a Delaware C Corp. Although I know that our VC friends on the panel just love Delaware C Corp. In fact, Bill made me convert one of my LLCs to a Delaware C Corp once when he invested in it.
Okay, so what would be the decision between an LLC and C? How would someone make a decision?
So we base it on a couple things. Number one, are you going to have what we call a stock option pool? I'm sure everybody here has heard of people getting stock options at Google and Facebook and everything else and getting rich, right? Well, LLCs can do that, but it's very, very difficult, number one. Okay. Number two, what we like is things to fit in little boxes, really tidy little boxes. And let me tell you why. When you're an entrepreneur and you're building a company, so much of your time has to be spent on building the company, hiring people, raising capital, and all those things, that trying to optimize the structure that we may even flinch at is really not worth your time. At the end of the day, the last thing you want to talk about when you're coming to people like us for capital is debating the merits of an LLC or a C corporation. All you want to be talking to us about is how great an idea you have, how successful you're being, and how much your customers and users are tearing down your door to use it.
Okay. That sounds like a C Corp.
Okay.
I mean, unless you hire Roger, I mean, he can kind of get it through.
Well, that's what we do 99% of the time. But I still want to have the discussion because you might, instead of being that next high-flying tech company, you might be a lifestyle business. You might never see a VC, right? In which case, you're going to wish that you were something other than a C Corp. And, you know, we should let the accountant weigh in on the tax side. I haven't even said why. It's your department.
Well, I don't actually practice tax too much, but I do have an opinion on this because I've worked with roughly 50 companies over the last couple months, and I hear the problems that they just have when they want to go raise money. One company was an S Corp, and they wanted to raise money through crowdfunding with a couple hundred people. Well, you can't do it.
Capped out.
Right? Some was an LLC. Again, they wanted to raise capital from a couple hundred people. That tax return is not going to be fun, right? You know, there are safe notes out of an LLC, not good. So I kind of I'm going to try to be a little bit more specific and say you really have to delineate whether you're going to be a small business or a corporation, right? A conglomerate. If you're going to be a small business, a restaurant, a service provider that may never grow to be more than $20 million, but you're going to be really good at it, then LLC may be right for you, right? Because it's a pass-through entity. But if you want to be a Facebook, I mean, I would just suggest a C Corp, but that's just, you know, my humble opinion.
Okay, so let's move on. So this founder doesn't have the experience to actually create, or the skills to actually create the product all by himself. He doesn't have enough money to pay anybody. So now he's going to try to hire somebody who can finalize or get the product built for him. What are the issues that need to be worried about in terms of consultant agreements if he's going to hire them as consultants? Briefly, right? Just because this is an issue where we see a lot of people getting into huge troubles later from an IP perspective, from an intellectual property perspective. So who wants to handle that question?
I'm happy to be the lawyer.
Right,
All right.
I would think so.
Okay.
I mean, let me just make it quick. Hire Roger. He takes care of everything.
Yeah, what would you do, Roger, if I hired you?
You raised so many issues there. With you said such a mouthful. So number one, who's ever heard of HomeJoy? All right. Know what happened to HomeJoy? They raised $10 million of venture, and they went out of business over an employee misclassification issue, right? So almost every startup in the Valley has this problem, is that you don't want to bring people on as employees because you don't want to do withholding, and you don't want to keep track of their hours, and you don't want to pay overtime, and all those issues. And if you're right, and if they're a contractor, like you say, those people are helping you out, then that's fine. But if you're wrong, and if the IRS disagrees with you, it could wipe out your company, right? It wiped out a venture-backed company, a real high flyer, too. So that's issue number one, is classification. And if so with the people that you bring on, you have to be very careful that you comply with applicable law. The second thing is the one you touched on is ownership of IP. You want every people who touches your technology to assign it to the company. So when you go talk to our VCs here on the panel about investing, their first thing they're going to ask you is, gee, do you own your IP? Well, maybe not the first thing, but it's going to come up pretty quickly. And you want to be able to say, yes, our company owns its IP. And you can only say that if you've got really good invention assignments from everybody who's touched this. And it really comes up in a lot of other, we're not going to get into it, but hackathons and demo days and things like that. You got everybody doing all this work on technology. You got to get invention assignments from them, whether they're employees or contractors. So those are really the two big things that come to mind when you give me that fact situation.
Okay, great. So the message here is, if you fail in doing those two things, really bad things can happen to you later, including the story of the $10 million startup that went poof because of an issue there. All right, so this guy has managed to attract some people. He signed the appropriate documents with them so that the IP belongs to the company. He's created a company, and now he's going to go to the next source. He's still sort of an idea. He's starting to develop it. He's starting to talk to a bunch of people. Would you want one of these little sculptures? And his friends and family all love it, and other people he's talked to. So he thinks there's going to be a product market fit. Now he goes to his friends and family. He's trying to raise, what, $25,000 to $50,000, right? Again, Roger, really quickly, what would be a good agreement for that stage?
How much are they raising? $25,000, $50,000, something
Right,
like that?
small amounts, yeah.
Yeah, so you don't want to do what you call a priced round. For something like that, you would do, and the reason why is it's too small to go to the trouble of valuing your company, and it's too small to pay me to have to do, complicated preferred stock agreements. So what people will do is something very simple, either a convertible note or this relatively new thing in the Valley, which is convertible equity, which is so convertible note, the idea is your friend is going to loan you $25,000 and you're going to agree to either pay them back or let them convert that note into equity, into preferred stock when you do the next stock round, your first institutional stock round alongside the VCs. And they'll get more favorable terms and more favorable valuation. But nevertheless, you don't have to value the company now, you just do that later. So I would either recommend convertible equity or convertible debt.
Okay, great. Okay, so he's done that. He's now got a small team, 2 or 3 people. He's moving forward on the development of his technology. He's sort of figuring out the market product fit, not 100%, but he's getting there closer. And now he's talked to a bunch of people, and they say, why don't you join an accelerator? Han, do you want to talk a little bit about accelerators?
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of accelerator in the Valley right now. The idea here for an accelerator is that you go and join their program, and they sometimes take a little bit of stock from you, or they invest, tens of thousands of dollars into the company. In exchange, you have to go to class, and some people run really good training class in pitching or development strategy framework. And then at the end of the program, you usually have to go through kind of what they call a demo day, that they invite potential investors to come see the demo, and from there, you head on to your own and get your company moving again. So that would be an accelerator to give you kind of a framework to learn as well as to experiment with your idea on the onset.
And a lot of them do give cash. So some of them give $75,000, $50,000, $125,000. They do take a percentage. I think the normal percentage is somewhere in the 8%, 6 to 8%, something like that.
10% common.
I'm sorry, say that again?
10% common.
10% of common, okay. So again, right now, once you're there, you've given up a chunk of your company. So you may have gotten some money and you've got a programmatic element, but you've also given up some small percent, a relatively good sized percentage of your company. So be aware of that. The other advantage, I think, of the accelerator is there is a network afterwards of people that you can tap. So there's some real value not only for the programmatic element, but also for
well, and there's a lot more to that. So look, we're talking about the make your own dog story over here, right? And as part of that, you're going to need 3D printers. You're going to need a lot of 3D printers. You're going to need software. You're going to need different materials so you can make Lassie look like Lassie and a bulldog look like a bulldog. And, as a startup, you don't have a lot of money, right? So how do you do that? Well, if you find a vertical-oriented incubator accelerator, and this is the greatest time to be an entrepreneur, because you can find an accelerator that specializes in everything. So this dog company can find a 3D a 3D printing accelerator. There's one over in the East Bay. There are actually two, where they will have access to all of these different printers, all of these different materials, so they can make Lassie look like Lassie and, you know, Underdog look like Underdog. And at the end of the day, that's where things have really changed over the last 10 years in our business, which is being able to find a group of experts, oftentimes, you know, that were successful entrepreneurs in these respective verticals, printing, AI, health, science, you know, anything these days. And in essence, be able to kind of come into that, you know, ecosystem, and it gives you access to intelligence, people, gives you access to equipment. If you're a 3D or IoT company, you're going to need access to hardware and equipment, and it just stretches out from there. And then, you know, you might have heard of 500 startups. Well, they have verticals for all of this. So there's sort of the lifesaver role of it, because they have different flavors for different things people do. So it's a really great opportunity, because I think one of the things we always are most concerned about is an entrepreneur trying to eke it out by themselves in their cave, you know, thinking that, you know, everything is right or everything is wrong. And it's a very challenging, lonely job. And what you don't want to do is drink your own Kool-Aid. You want a bunch of people around who are going to tell you that it's good, it's bad, it's ugly. They're going to help you get better. And that's what the system's all about. And now's a great time, because, you know, there's probably an incubator for ice cream companies.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, I think it's a great time to look around to see who else you can get, what accelerator you can get into and get not only the equipment in this case, but also the expertise and the network.
Yeah, I think most of them will ask you to learn something too, in terms of, you know, the lean startup process and the development framework. So those are really helpful in terms of put your perspective into a particular model that you know has proven to work. So that's kind of helpful in terms of forcing you to think in a more business-like setting versus just, you know, again, like what F was talking about, you know, in your cave and just invent it along the way. That's probably not going to make your company scalable down the road.
Okay, Bill, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, we're huge enthusiasts around the evolution of this accelerator, you know, ecosystem for all the reasons that F has outlined. It's you know, you got to be a little bit careful though. I think in the way things have evolved now, it's generally accepted that that if you get in, you know, you get into an accelerator program, that's a good thing for you. There are, however, some situations we've seen where there are some accelerators that don't have as good a reputation, who might have taken a bigger piece of you than maybe they should have, and you may not have gotten everything out of it. So you got to, you know, just like everything else in life, you know, you've got to do your homework and make sure that you're joining a program that really is going to add value to your business and not just take value from you.
Right. Has everybody seen the TV show Silicon Valley by any chance? Raise your hands if you have. Okay, accelerators aren't like that at all.
Okay. All right, so where are we? So the founder put in $10,000 of his own dollars. His friends and family put in 25. He went to an accelerator and they put in 75, so he's now at about 110. He signed some agreements with some co-founders. So that the IP is his, so he's protected himself. He's formed a company, and now the question is, his technology's gotten to the point where it works, sort of. It doesn't maybe exactly look like your dog, but it comes pretty close, and he's just making it the software technology behind it better. Okay, he has a couple of machines that he has access through to an accelerator that he can test his stuff. But now he needs to figure out what he wants to do. His original idea was not to own the machines, the 3D machines, but to outsource that. And he's still thinking of doing that. So let's see. What are his options? Is crowdfunding an option at this point? David?
It's definitely an option. there's things to be said for it and against it, that's for sure. And sometimes I play a very adversarial role on the panel like this. But I think of a company.
Just wait, it's coming.
It's coming. I think of a company in this industry specifically, which is pets, right? You guys probably well know if you're a pet person, you are a pet person, right? If you're a cat lady, you are a cat lady. And people are very passionate about their pets. What that means, though, is you have an affinity group. You have a group that is willing to put money into something because they really want to statue the dog or cat that they absolutely love, and they'll basically pay anything to get it. Now, if your technology provides that to them, they'll probably put money into your company, even if it's not looking perfect quite yet. The problem is, in crowdfunding, how do you reach those people, right? Because what we've seen in equity crowdfunding is that the crowd will not find you. You have to find the crowd. The market is not there yet where people go onto a couple portals and search for investments. It really has to be your network, your group. What does that mean? That might mean networking with your humane society, networking with your local dog park, right? And building an email base so you can start building your affinity group of people that want to invest. I also think, as a contrary thought to the accelerator, is how many really successful entrepreneurs have taken a prescribed path towards success. Most of the people that we think about in our society that are very successful, the Steve Jobs, the Elon Musk, the Mark Zuckerbergs, they came out because they thought differently. They thought about a path to get something. They didn't care about the traditional ways of getting there. So, I would say, or just suggest, as you guys are starting up your businesses and thinking about the process, don't think about just what has worked traditionally, but what might work for you, even if it doesn't fit the mold.
So I'm not clear exactly, what you're saying there. Are you saying you should do crowdfunding rather than doing an accelerator, or are you saying if you're a real entrepreneur, you won't go with the crowd, will? I'm unclear what your point is.
I'll tell you what. Having access to equipment, 3D printing equipment, that's a tough thing to argue. I don't think I can argue against that. If you have an accelerator that's has a vertical in that, and you can get access to equipment whereby you couldn't otherwise, you do that.
But I kind of separate the two, so I don't want to get these two kind of wound around the axle, because I think at the end of the day, one is a mechanism to raise capital, and you were talking about some of the marketing requirements and other things, because it's not just like found money.
Right.
On the other side, one is teaching you to potentially be a better business person, a better technology, a better market fit. So ideally, those two could work together quite swimmingly, right?
Yes.
So in other words, what you're saying is the accelerator actually provides training and teaching and a programmatic element, whereas crowdfunding is just cash.
Yeah.
There's
neither. But one of the things I would be very helpful. It's really important to understand there are two very different types of crowdfunding.
Oh yeah.
And so please, let's get the stage set. So clarify the different types of crowdfunding.
So there's two sets of crowdfunding. One is a donations-based or a deferred revenue model, which is the things that you guys have probably typically heard of, the Indiegogos, the Kickstarters, where when someone gives money, they're not buying into the company. They're either pre-funding a product or they're just donating for a cause. The Jobs Act, which was created in 2002 and implemented in 2015 and 16, changed that such that as an investor, you can actually buy equity, or it doesn't have to be equity, but we're not talking about that today. You can actually buy equity in these companies where they don't have to give you a product or anything in return. You're getting a common share stock, a preferred stock, or some other type of security. So in essence, the crowd becomes the financier of the company.
And there's some legal issues around that, Roger, correct, in terms of who you should be going with?
Well, around everything. Which one would you like me to?
Yeah, there's a legal issue around everything.
Right?
Did you get that? Just go to law school. just right now, get up.
Everybody leave and
right
go to
now,
law
go
school.
to law school.
I do want to talk about crowdfunding. So I like that. So the rewards-based crowdfunding, the Kickstarter stuff, that's great. The legal issues are relatively discreet. You've got your typical warranty claims if it turns out your product hurt somebody or you infringe on a patent or stuff like that. If you're giving a product away, you might not even be doing that. And then there are tax issues if you get money in one year and actually ship the product in another. I'll leave it to the accountant to explain that. But what's more interesting, what you're hearing more about lately, is this equity crowdfunding. And that takes different flavors as well. And the one that most recently, even though it's been 5 years since the Jobs Act, the one we're hearing about most recently is Reg CF. That's retail crowdfunding. That's where you can raise small amounts of money from a large number of people up to $1 million. And there are some very good platforms out there. And it seems to work best with products that people sort of understand and get. Like, I don't know, pet people, I'll take your word for it. I'm more of a fish person. I have this Japanese fish at home.
Have you seen Fishbit yet? Have you seen Fishbit? Those guys are great.
I have this Japanese fish at home. I tried to have a conversation with it the other day, but it turned out to be a koi fish. Oh, well.
Oh, dude.
So, but crowdfunding, even equity crowdfunding, tends to work better for products, consumer-based products that people sort of understand. They're willing to put a couple $1,000s into it. So this is the kind of company that might work well. What I would caution you against, though, is there are a couple of really good sites for this, and then there are a couple of markets for lemons. And you don't want to be, you're known by the company that you keep. So make sure you're on a good platform before you do this. You know, take a look at who's listed and who's raised money and how much they've raised. You know, not how much money the companies who are on the site have raised, how much has been raised on the site and who's standing behind it. And you'll find it's a pretty small list, but it's a pretty good list to get on. So if you're going to go that route and you got the right metrics and the right kind of product, that might be a good place to go. Later, we'll probably talk about the other type of crowdfunding, right?
What's the other type?
Well, then there's the accredited only.
Oh, yeah.
type
Well, that's
crowdfunding.
okay, yeah,
Okay, I'll save that for later.
Yeah.
There's also another aspect of crowdfunding, which is testing out your marketing message, testing out the market demand. I've seen products that like really becomes very attractive in the open market after they do a very successful crowdfunding campaign to tune their message, to make sure the product really fits what people are looking for. So it's more like a test market that they're running the campaign on.
And that was the point I was just about to make, is that one of the things I love telling people about equity crowdfunding or really any crowdfunding is it will help businesses fail faster than ever. Because essentially it's instant market validation if you get enough eyes on it. And it's great if your friends and family like it and it's a good concept, but ultimately somebody has to buy a product or a service. And if the market's not willing to invest in you, maybe they're not willing to buy that product as well. As a great example, there's a company called The Coolest Cooler. Have you guys heard of it? Sure. And they basically
like the poster boy for crowdfunding.
Right. And they created a cooler and it wasn't very good, and they put it, I think they launched it in the winter and nobody bought it. And they got feedback and they made a better cooler. Well, it still didn't succeed because it just wasn't that cool. And then they went back a third time to the crowd with a more improved version, and they raised, I don't know, $10+ million. But ultimately, they still had problems fulfilling that, which was, I think to Roger's point, is you still have to fulfill that stuff when you're doing regular crowdfunding.
Let me pause on that. That's true of equity crowdfunding too.
Well, I got a really bad story to come with this. So you want to why don't you do yours first, because then mine's just going to total
story,
the whole
just,
category.
I'll tell you a secret. You know, you go out and do these equity crowdfunding, you do not want to fail at that, for sure, for the same reasons. And the smart companies, they'll have the money lined up before they even do the crowdfunding. So they'll have all their friends and family and everything. They know people are going to put money up. So no matter, so at least they kind of prime the pump. They seed it a little bit. But if you have a failed crowdfunding campaign, that's out there for the whole world to see. Tell the story, F.
All right, so we just recently looked at a company, great founders, totally cool company, and I'm not going to say the name, but they have an IoT, light, broadly. I'm not going to get too deep into it. They raised $1 million on crowdfunding to deliver X amount of these products to people. Then they figured out that, that's an interesting business, but their software is way more valuable that they had to build to make these IoT lights work. And then they went to all of us venture folks and we're like, this is great. We'd really love to fund your software company. They're like, well, we have to make 182,000 of these lights. And we're like, well, why don't you go make those lights and come on back when you're done? And, you know, you don't want to have that conversation. Now, if you're making the cooler or, you know, there's a duck call or, you know, the 3D printed dog thing, I mean, you know, some of these things are going to work. And in some, you know, mechanisms they work. But, you know, to David's point, it's a marketing exercise. And I think what we've come to find is by the time you're done spending your effort marketing into that crowdfunding vortex, you could have equally, you know, spent that time marketing to angel groups, accelerators, incubators, and most likely come out with as much or more and not 1,000 unknown friends all around the world that are now your investor base. Just my opinion. Your turn.
Okay, so go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, just to chime in. I mean, and this has gotten a little bit confusing, maybe, I'm not sure. But I would encourage you as entrepreneurs to put crowdfunding on the side as a totally separate thing. And I'll tell you if you want to go through the venture equity cycle, for the most part, I think the equity crowdfunding side is a distraction. As Roger said, the only way it's likely to work for you is if you have your ducks all in a row and you can raise money anyway. Maybe you can raise some incremental money via something like an angel list, but you do not want to go off and experiment with you know, trying to throw it up there and see if somebody will invest in you. That is most likely for a substantial percentage of entrepreneurs. I mean, the overwhelming majority of entrepreneurs. If you throw it up hoping that somebody maybe will invest in you, it will kill you. It will kill you. Kickstarter and Indiegogo, that's totally different. That is not equity fundraising. That is not funding your company. That is, you know, product marketing, pre-sales. It's a very different thing, and it can be extremely valuable, as has been said. So if you have a consumer-oriented product, and you know, I would get your act together in terms of initial funding first. Make sure you have the resources to do Kickstarter well, because if you do Kickstarter well, it can be very valuable. If you hack something together and throw it on Kickstarter, it'll probably be a waste of your time and it might poison your company. And so unless you have enough resources to recover. So again, I don't see this crowdfunding thing as the beginning. There are some examples where people have used it as the beginning, but nowadays, the guys that are doing the Kickstarter and Indiegogo, they already have their act together. And for the most part, the equity crowdfunding has not yet developed yet, and the people who succeed with it, again, they already have their act together. So in the sequencing of this, at least one man's opinion, the crowdfunding thing is later and separate in the sequencing of building your company.
And one really important thing to keep in mind if you're going to head down predominantly the product side path is make sure your patents are in place before you go there. Your software is there and all of those other things, because I brought another story with you, which is a company we looked at, which was producing a product called the Legacy Box. This was a very cool family. They had lost someone in the family. They had a hard time bringing all their digital assets together. Their company was actually called something else, but that was their product. They put it on Indiegogo. They didn't raise any money. Some folks who happen to, run a film development and/or video to digital operation in Tennessee saw this great idea of Legacy Box, and you're probably going to hear about it on the radio if you haven't already. And what they didn't do is this company hadn't completed their trademark. They hadn't completed their IP, and in this case, they didn't raise any money, so they're not going to be around to defend any of it. So before you put it out there, make sure you're covered, because you're basically going to put it on a billboard on 101, and every developer in the valley, marketing person, et cetera, is basically going to drive by. And what you don't want to do is give someone at Google a really, really good idea, because they have a lot of people and a lot of money, and they can do it really quick.
And a lot of good lawyers.
Maybe we can segue a little bit and talk about, for the dog business, what kind of IP are we talking about, right? I mean, there are different types of IP. It's just not restricted to patent. It's just not restricted to trademark. It could be trade secret. It could be, you know, copyright on your software, et cetera. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that you can consider. And the combination of all these factors is really give you the IP advantage that you would need to compete with the big guys or some copycats. So when Roger was talking about IP, there's more than just one thing. You know, you have to think in terms of other things, way beyond just patents.
And I apologize. Because I just don't know the crowd here. But does everybody know what we mean when we talk about IP? Anybody want the definition of IP?
Yeah, why don't you define it, Bill?
Well, I mean, it's the lawyers, but you know, I just want to make sure we're all the same, because I know we're all over the place here. But you know, your IP is your intellectual property, and a lot of people think of that as kind of patents, and that's kind of the common, you know, sort of wisdom as to what IP is. But as Roger would tell you if he had the mic instead, you know, it includes your trade secrets, the stuff only you know how to do, and you have to protect that as well. And it includes things like your brands, your logos, your trademarks, you know, your content, copyright stuff. So all this stuff, the point is you want to have good IP hygiene. You want to have good intellectual property hygiene at the beginning of the company, at the very beginning of the company, and that was what Roger was saying. And it's more than just whether or not you file a patent. It's the very broad thing on all of the intellectual property that goes into your defensible advantage. Was that okay, Roger?
Yeah, you're hired.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on.
One more.
Yeah.
Yeah. One more last item is that, like, if you're starting your dog business, and likely you're going to have a friend that's going to come finish off your technology for you, and this person, you cannot pay them full time, and they probably work for Google, they work for 3D System or somebody, and there's always that issue that you should have a conversation with your lawyer in terms of what kind of firewall do you build around this person, because he or she will be bringing part of his brain that includes other people's IP into your enterprise. And it might forever taint you in terms of, you know, what's yours and not yours.
Right. So I think that's a very important point, because it's not just hiring somebody who's an independent who's just out there by himself. If you hire somebody who has a job, now things get very, very complicated, because now Google can say it belongs to them if it's a Google developer. So be very, very cautious there. Okay. Well, our entrepreneur decided not to go for crowdfunding for all the good reasons. And so he didn't raise any money in crowdfunding. And he didn't do either. He didn't do crowdfunding, which was like a Kickstarter, pre-selling his, you know, dog statues or his customers' dog statues, and he didn't do equity either. Now he's decided that he still needs, you know, somewhere in the neighborhood of $250,000. He's raised a little over 100, and he's going to go now to the angels. Okay, so Han, can you describe angel for me? Describe what an angel is. So
Angel is just, you know, like a sugar daddy.
Whoa, dude, this is an educational institution.
Yeah. So an angel, I'll do it.
Let us rephrase.
An angel is a high net worth individual.
Han's not going to have the mic for a while here, so there's no sugar daddies involved. An angel is a person that gives you money, thus the term angel, right? Now, here in Silicon Valley, we think of those as people that have become successful at other companies. They may have been successful in other businesses. They want to get in on the ground level at the new Facebook or Snapchat or other thing like that. And, you know, angels are a slippery slope. You could take money from the absolute best angel in the world, or you could take money from a totally politically incorrect angel, or you could take, you know, money from an angel that shows up every morning at your office and saying, "How are we doing?" And, you have to, I think, be able to look through it. And the term angel has now gone from an angel to an angel group. And actually, this week is the Angel Capital Association conference where there's 20,000 angels in San Francisco. So, this is really
should all go
broadened out. Sorry?
They should all leave here and go to San Francisco.
I was going there, but, we got to do what we got to do here.
Okay. All right, so now what we know, an angel, there's, Roger, I don't know if you want to go through the quick definition of what an angel is in terms of money and that kind of thing. I don't know if it's necessary.
No, I think that's as good a definition as any. I mean, you folks should just think of an angel as a person that's going to give you that early money. They're going to take a lot more risk. Usually they're going to require a lot less in terms of validation. And hopefully, if they hit, they're going to hit a lot bigger.
So I'm going to interrupt and make an important point here about the phrase, angels are people who give you money. And because we also hear about VCs are people who give you money. Never ever say to an investor, will you give me money? Because investors, you will never find a good angel who will give you money. They will invest in your company. They will not give you money. So when I was a young entrepreneur, many years ago, I got just whacked in the side of the head with a 2x4 by an investor when I made the comment about, giving me money. And he said, I will never give you money, Bill. I may invest in your company,
parents
but I
give
will
you
never
money.
give you money. So just understand that's the deal. It's not about giving. So.
Okay, so let's talk about
because they're going to take something which is called equity, and we
Right.
need to cover that part because they don't just give you money.
Right. Okay, so he's going to the angels, and he's asking them to invest in his idea and his company. Bill, you want to take it from there? What I want to discuss, Bill, here's the stuff I want to discuss.
Yes.
Is what are the milestones and metrics angels are going to be asking for at this stage in the company? And then from Roger, what is the mechanism? It's probably going to be a convertible note, but you might talk a little bit about that as well. So Bill, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, so once, to get on the venture capital track means, you're going to start down this path where you're going to plan to raise multiple rounds of financing in order to build a fast growth, high value company, become the next unicorn. And so pretty much every unicorn starts with angel financing. And these days, the bar keeps shifting in terms of where is the bar for what you have to have accomplished in order to start getting angels to invest in your company. So with the emergence of all these platform technologies and the accelerator programs, what has happened is if you do not already have some level of proof of concept, then it's really hard to get professional investors to invest in your company. In the olden days, when I was a lad, I was able to raise venture capital from a venture capital firm with a PowerPoint. That was the old, that's gone. So now you have to have product and maybe even some level of customers in order to start enticing angels and professional investors to get on this track, because there are so many startups out there now. You are competing. If you're an entrepreneur, you're not just sort of trying to make the case that you can be successful. You have to make the case that your proposition is better than all of those other scores of business plans and pitches that any given angel investor is looking at. So the bar is pretty high these days. And so one of the things that we haven't talked about yet is if you're going to go out seeking professional investment money, almost certainly you have to have a real team. You don't necessarily have to be paying them full time, but it is very hard for a single entrepreneur with a clever technology and an idea for a company to raise money even from angels now. So the professional angels now, they're going to want to see that you've got a team, and there's a very strong bias out there in the investment community. It's not universal, but there's an extremely strong bias that says if you're going to build a fast growth, highly successful company, you've got to have at least 2, maybe 3 founders in the company that have these complementary skills that will enable you to fill the gaps and build this company. I can keep going, but
No. I think that's a very important point. So in our story, this individual, the founder, has some part-time people who are mostly technologists. And I think what Bill's saying is that may not be enough at the angel group. So if all you have is 2 or 3 people of your friends who are all technologists or who are all marketing people who are one discipline, and you try to get money from the angels, you're likely not to succeed. Fair statement?
Yeah, I mean, and you know, I get some entrepreneurs who say, well, I've got a CTO. You know, there's a guy who is a friend of a friend who's going to do the tech for me. And that's not good enough. I mean, we want to see angels want to see a real team, real co-founders who are really working together and are really passionately committed to making this company a success. Not an inventor with an idea and some people he or she has hired.
Okay. So our entrepreneur failed. Tried to get angel funding, and because they didn't have a team and didn't have the product developed enough, he failed. So now he had to circle back, and he had to raise more money, probably from friends and family again, to bring a stronger team and to get the product a little bit more developed. Rev 2, he's there, he gets the product, he now can actually grab a video and develop an actual statue. Would that change the picture? Or not enough?
Well, I think at the end of the day, there are a couple of things that could be taken away from that. So first, we really don't like second, cracks at the bat for a whole host of reasons. Now, we do like an entrepreneur failing at something, coming back and doing something else, preferably funded by another VC who paid for them to learn a lot of lessons before we put our money in. But that's not always the case. I mean, I think what we're talking about here is the iterations or the processes that entrepreneurs go through as they kind of develop their model. And I think, to Bill's point, on the venture side and certainly on the angel or seed fund side, we're looking for a team. A team is a huge part. And I think we, have talked about having this kind of founder, that kind of founder, but team is a critical word. Because not every company ends up the way it started. I wish everybody out here, you said, this is exactly what I'm going to do. 20 years from now, this is exactly what you're doing, and you're wildly successful. That'd be wonderful. But it's not. Companies pivot. Companies grow. And when we're taking bets on teams, if you will, we're betting that those individuals, despite changes in the market, evolution of technology, failure of fit potentially, that are going to be strong enough, have a great, business acumen or technical chop, that they're going to be able to pivot and be able to evolve that idea into something that's going to be successful. And so for us, the team is oftentimes as important as an idea. So the guy with the great dog thing could show up, and then a team of 3, as Bill was saying, where one's a technical person, one's a business person, one's a salesperson shows up. They're way behind the other guy. But we might invest in them before the other guy. Because the other guy proved you can, print out a dog. He didn't prove you could sell it. He didn't prove you could market it. He didn't prove you could scale it into a big business. He proved you could print a dog. So for us, that's not very interesting. What's super interesting to us is the 3 people that came after him and said, we saw a guy print a dog, and we know how to market it, sell it, and scale it. So that's a good way to think of it and why that team becomes important. Also, team dynamics. We want you to play well with others. We want you to get along. Because if you're going to be successful and run a company with thousands of people, if you can't get along with 3 people, you're really going to have a hard time with 300,000.
Great. Okay. So in our story, he went back. He got a team, and even though second chances almost never happen, this one did. Okay. So we're just going to do that because otherwise we'd never get through it.
Do we
All right,
have
what
to?
what are the milestones that an angel wants?
At the beginning or?
When
So,
they,
well, I
yeah,
think
go ahead.
we went through that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
we're past it.
so so then,
No, I mean they invest, and then what do they expect once they give you $500,000, $250,000? What are the milestones after they invest?
So the nature of this dog game, this process, the nature of this process we call the venture company process is you're going through sequences of rounds of investing. And that has evolved over the years, and there are now finer and finer sequences. In the good old days, you would raise enough money to go at least 12 to 18 months. Unfortunately, the way the world works now is it's almost this high-speed financing happening where companies, both out of necessity and out of design, they raise little bits of money to get to the next milestone. But in every case, you as entrepreneurs, and hopefully your investors, want to make sure that with each round of financing, you are crystal clear that you can get to the next inflection point. So inflection points are these milestones where you've demonstrated that you can achieve a certain milestone objective that increases the value of your company. So, you go from a proof of concept to a commercial beta, where you don't just prove the technology works, you prove that the technology works, and people use it and people like it. Or you go from a beta to a general announcement, to a GA release, to a real product that you can commercialize and sell and take money for if you're not taking money for the beta. Or you go from this stage of team development to the next stage of team development, or this stage of technology development to the next stage of technology development. So there are, depending on the business you're in, if you're in healthcare, there are different milestones. If you're in material science, there are different milestones. But depending on the business you're in, you and your investors want to be crystal clear and aligned on what you're going to do with the money in terms of achieving a milestone that that gets you to an inflection point where your company becomes more valuable. Then your investors hopefully are working for you to help find the next investors while you're focused hopefully primarily on executing. Unfortunately, the world doesn't always work that way, and you have to do both. You have to execute and you have to fundraise. Ideally, though, if you have great angels, the angels will take at least some of the work of the fundraising off of you. And so that's what angels are working on in terms of milestones. You want to take us to the next step? Do you want to go to angel funds, or do you want to go
so
to
we
VC?
can go.
Where do
We can very quickly. Because we're running out of time, but we can very quickly go to. What we were talking was individual angels. Angel funds are more like mini VCs. So they're going to be a lot more, require a lot more due diligence. They're going to peer a lot more closely, and they're going to give you a lot more money.
And take longer.
And take a lot longer to do all that.
And have a lot of personalities.
I'd like to jump in here for a second here. Those words Bill Reichert used about angels not giving you, it's kind of ringing in my ears. Nobody gives you money, and just reminds us all that they're investing, they're buying something from you. They're buying a security. That means you're subject to securities laws. And it's gotten so easy in this do-it-yourself world to go online and download a form. And I will tell you that I will introduce you to people that are sitting in jail right now because they went and did it themselves and did not comply with securities laws. So, I hate to be Debbie Downer. I'm always the wet blanket here.
I got a great story. I'll let you go.
We all do,
No, but a LegalZoom in corp that a great company here had, and whoever signed the doc, they needed to find them because they were missing a single doc, and when they were doing their Series A, they couldn't find him. Okay? I've known Roger for 17 years, and I can find Roger. So that's why you hire a professional. There's at Roger's firm. If you call, they answer, and they send the document, right?
All right. Good job, F. But I do want you to keep that in mind. I mean, it's serious stuff. And even though we're talking about it as though it's a kind of a casual thing, it's not at all. And it doesn't, unlike what you might think, you know, in securities we have this saying, it's seller beware. You know, there are these hoops you have to jump through, and depending what state you're in, they're more complex than others. But if you mess this up, you're done. You're not only done with this company, you may be done with any other company. So just be careful.
Okay, so now he's raised some money from the angel, and let's just skip ahead because we're running out of time. And he doesn't go to an angel group who goes directly to a VC. Talk a little bit, Roger, maybe here, between the kind of documentation or agreement you might have with an individual angel, convertible note perhaps, versus a price round.
Say by priced round, that's what we mean as equity. So the securities we've been talking about so far that you are selling to your investor, who is not giving you anything, that security is a convertible instrument, usually, meaning that you don't have to value your company. There's debate about this. There's debate right on this panel about this, but theoretically the companies like it because they don't have to try to value their company. The investor likes it because they don't have to try to figure out your value. But eventually you're going to go to an institutional investor, or you're going to raise more money, or you're going to invest with somebody like a VC or an angel fund that really does want a valuation. They want to know what percentage of the company they're getting in exchange for their investment. That'll be preferred stock. Okay, you're not going to sell common stock for lots of reasons we can talk about. It's going to be preferred stock, meaning that they're making an investment that has a whole series of negotiated rights, preferences, and privileges. Okay?
This is a good time for David to jump in. I'm going to toss it to you because Bill talked about IP hygiene, which sounded like something you should get antibiotics for. But David needs to talk about accounting hygiene, because when startups get through those hurdles that we've all talked about here, you know, and they come to people like Bill and I, you know, we're going to expect a level of button-down, transparent finance, and that's why accountants, just like lawyers, are critical in that process. And David, maybe you can talk about some of the things that the different stages of investors are going to look for on the accounting side, because it's super important.
Sure. I mean, I think most startups that I've seen go from the concept of we'll figure out when we get money, right? But that doesn't always work. I ran into a company not too long ago that had their financials were an absolute mess. They couldn't even figure out if they were profitable. The siblings were actually stealing money. It was bad, and they were looking to get acquired because the owner was 75 years old and wanted to retire. They went out and tried to get a buyer, and they were trying to sell their company for $40 million, and they couldn't find it. They got an audit. They cleaned up their books. They were able to present to people and use Wells Fargo as their banker and go out to the market. And they ended up getting $82 million for their company, just because they actually had financials to show and be able to talk intelligently about that. Now, on an earlier stage, Bill talked about inflection points, right? Some of those might be financial based, right? Break even, margins are probably very important. So to be able to talk intelligently about your financial metrics is extremely important as you start to go to later rounds of financing.
Right. So the message there is that you really have to be buttoned up when you get to the VC round and probably to the angel round as well. Does anybody want to give either?
At one point is that what left unsaid is valuation. Yeah. I've met a lot of entrepreneurs that have this internal psychological struggle over valuation because it's their baby. They suffered through it. They might even cause divorce because of their work in the startup, and therefore he's not going to sell stock at less than 100 million valuation or whatever, or he read somewhere in Forbes magazine that Uber just raised another $1 billion at 62 billion or whatever, and so he should deserve to be at least 100 million. No, don't count on that, because it works in every different case, and don't struggle through it, because if you don't have the money, you won't ever be able to build the valuation that you desire anyway. So sometimes live with it, basically.
Okay, the other thing that we haven't talked, and Roger, I'm going to bring you in real quick, is with the VC, typically they want board seats and probably control. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Roger?
Well, yeah, it's not just about valuation, I think, is what you're getting at. I mean, valuation, when you talk to the VCs, and we could talk for hours about how arrive at that number, but it's rights, preferences, and privileges, and they will want a board seat in your Series A round. Typically, at least 1 out of 3 is my experience. You'll probably lose control by Series B, maybe earlier in some other industries. But keep in mind, you have to pay real attention. There's a long list of rights preference, and I know we're running out of time, but I want to tell you one quick story about that. I tell this story a lot when I talk to people who want to go out and get VC funding about a person who came to me, a founder of a company, and it was a typical story. She founded the company, did multiple series of VCs, eventually kicked her out, and brought their own people in. Company eventually got sold, and she read about it in the papers, got sold for $500 million cash. You know how much she got out of that? She's a founder. She got 0 out of that. Her co-founders got 0. Her friends and family who invested in her got 0. Just so many people got 0. You had to get way into the alphabet of the series of rounds before people started making money. So how did that happen? Well, we could talk for an hour, and I'll tell you just how they did it, but it's because it was not about valuation. It was about all those other rights and preferences and privileges that preferred stock has, like anti-dilution, right, and and full ratchet and all of that stuff.
I just want to chime in because this is a perfect segue for me to pump up equity crowdfunding, and I'll probably get crucified for this.
Come on back, buddy.
So I'm ready for it.
We're waiting down here.
I think that we're talking about the venture route, but in all reality, I assume that's a very small percentage of the companies that will ever get down that route. But that doesn't mean there's a small percentage of good companies. There's plenty of companies in this world that will never be VC investable, but that doesn't mean you're not small company good, right? And one of the great things that's completely flipped with equity crowdfunding is whereas the VCs control a lot of the pricing and board seats and first rights on the next round, the entrepreneur actually controls the process in equity crowdfunding. They set the valuation, they set the terms. They don't give up board seats. They don't give up the next round. So you're very much still in control. With that said, I've seen too many companies go with a very high valuation that doesn't allow for their investors to make money over the long term because the next round is likely to be a down round if they're successful and get to an institutional round.
Yeah, very good point. Okay, so we're
gonna let you live.
Concede?
Yeah, no, we're just gonna let you live.
But I mean, the point for a lot of folks, just in general, is most people don't get to VC. They'll never get there. It's just going to be a very successful company, but they're not going to be the next Uber or the next Google. They're going to be just
but we raised the bar. I mean, let's just be clear. I mean, even though the 1% will ever end up getting a check from us, by default, we make that whole stack stronger, which means when you guys are shooting for the fence, but you end up with a single or a double or a triple or an infield home run, you're still going to end up being successful.
Right.
But in a lot of ways, this process that Bill was talking about with milestones and setting up these metrics and all the way down to crowdfunding, many of these other categories, is because of our industry to a large degree. In establishing
That's why you're so
the
loved.
ecosystem. Yeah, we're loved. Very few bad VCs. I mean, we're doing this for free, guys. Give us a break. I mean, we're not making the bucks up here.
Okay, so let me summarize really quickly. We're not going to get to the second case. I'll say a couple words about it. But so the founder started, put in $10,000 of his own money, went to friends and family, who very forgiving people, and raised $25,000. But he still needed more money. He went to an accelerator, got $75,000, got some equipment, got a lot of help, got a network. Then went to the angels where he could raise $250,000 to $1 million. Finally to a VC, which is a little bit beyond that. We're not going to talk about the second case. I'm just going to mention it briefly. We don't have time. But the second case was going to be more of a person who was going to develop a new beer with a restaurant attached. That kind of a business is very local, very hard to scale quickly, to have restaurant 2, 3, 4, 5, and will not likely be either a VC, maybe an angel, but probably won't go beyond that. They do, however, have an opportunity to raise money through debt instruments, and the SBDC knows a lot about restaurants and that kind of a business. But just be aware that there's some businesses that are just not going to be right for the route we talked about with the tech business. It's going to be very, very difficult to raise money. It is possible, but it's a lot more difficult. Okay, I'm going to just go down and ask everybody to say one sort of piece of advice that you want to leave, and it doesn't have to be you. You don't have to start. If somebody else wants to start, that's fine.
No,
Particularly for students.
Quickly for students. Yeah, so, we spent a lot of time this evening going through a lot of complexity associated with the nuts and bolts of starting a startup company and raising money for a startup company. But what I want to do is make sure at the end of the day, you guys are all focused on sort of the core of what you're up to, assuming, and we didn't get a good poll of the audience, but I'm assuming all of you are here because you're interested in being entrepreneurs and starting a company. And so you can get into the weeds. We want to help you avoid making mistakes, and that's why we tell you to hire people like Roger to make sure you don't get you don't do mistakes, and go to places that will help you get good mentors and advice. But my biggest advice to every entrepreneur is keep a clear focus on what is the value proposition of the company you are launching. Because so many entrepreneurs, they get so wrapped up in the sort of details of the product and the technology and the process, they lose sight of the value that they're creating. And so rule number one for Garage is always focus on creating value. Don't focus on making money. Focus on creating value. Don't focus on making money. Because a vision, a focus, a passion for going out there and doing something that creates value for a target group of people, that's what brings the team together. That's what keeps it together through the hard times. And that's what makes great companies. So focus on creating value.
All right, so I'm going to add to the pep talk here in a little bit of a way, which is that this is the greatest time and at the same time easiest time in history to go out and be an entrepreneur. You guys are on right here, Silicon Valley, the center of the startup universe. There are entire countries that are trying to move here to do this. And the ecosystem, whether it's Roger and lawyers and David, Han and resources, us on the money side. I mean, this is a candy shop. When I started my first company in the late 80s, it was a nightmare. We didn't even know where to find the right people for this. And so it's really, really a good time to get out there and start it. As Bill said, it moves fast, which means if your idea was terrible, you're going to find out quickly and maybe you go get a job. But the startup ecosystem doesn't just mean you starting a company. It means you joining other people to start a company. There's even a website called foundersdating.com where you can go find another founder, and no dating-esque, but to get together to help start companies. And to a large degree, that even if your particular idea isn't the greatest, your idea added to the stack of ideas on a great team might be the right stuff. So, don't feel that you've got to go out and hit the bullseye. Because if you get on a team that hits a bullseye, you end up at Apple or Google or Facebook or anything else. And everybody's successful both from an economic standpoint, but really going out there and succeeding in the space is the most amazing feeling ever.
And maybe just piggyback off Bill's point about creating value. Creating value does not mean that you march in a straight line. Sometimes, in most cases that I've seen in terms of successful company, is how they pivot and when they pivot is as important to their success than the original idea or the original objective of their development.
I first want to say that probably the smartest thing you could do is reiterate what kind of Roger and Bill said, is get yourself set up the right way and structure yourself right for success, because too many bad things can happen to you. I would say for the students in the room, you're entering a world where the dynamic's changing. And I always think from both an investor and a company standpoint, 30, 40 years ago, if you could invest in a small cap IPO, like an Apple or a Cisco or Intel, I believe, if memory serves me right. And over a 30, 40 year span, you could turn $1,000 into $330,000 if you log on to the right company. The problem with these days is that there's no more small cap IPOs, which is why I believe so heavily in equity crowdfunding, because it allows the everyday person to invest in something special. If you were to invest in Alibaba, that company would need to be worth $500 quintillion to get you the same return as you would have invested in Apple on day one when it IPO'd. So this doesn't just, equity crowdfunding is not just for the entrepreneurs and the young people, the millennials who are so heavily into brand loyalty, because that's what equity crowdfunding is. It's brand loyalty. If you own a stock of Ford, you're going to probably buy a Ford. But also as an investor, it's a lot of opportunity for you. We're still in the early stages, so don't knock us too hard, because I think in 3 to 5 years, once the public is educated about it and it becomes a little bit more mainstream, you're going to see some potential unlocked.
Well, since I can't be a good example like the rest of my co-panelists, I'll just have to settle for being a horrible warning. So we could, the biggest thing is for you, the secret here that some people figure out, some people don't, is you really need to educate yourselves on a lot of this. And I congratulate you for being here tonight and coming out to these events. There's a lot of other places you could be to understand this yourself. And legal is one of those places where you really do need, especially in this do-it-yourself world that we're moving into more and more through automation, you really do need to understand these issues yourself so you know what questions to ask. Now, I have a book about legal mistakes that startups make. It's what I've seen over the last 30 years. And they always make the same mistakes over and over and over. The name of the book is Dead on Arrival: How to Avoid the Legal Mistakes That Could Kill Your Startup. And if you'd like a copy, you can have a copy of that book if you go to Amazon and buy one. Or if you leave me a card, I'll send you an electronic copy. But I encourage you, whether you read my book or somebody else's, or if you go out and get a whatever for dummies, it's really important that you really have an understanding yourselves of what the issues are, so you know what questions to ask and how to have a successful company. Thank you.
Excellent. So let me summarize. Focus on the value, take advantage of the ecosystem, be flexible. Don't forget crowdfunding as a really great source, and educate yourself. So now we have some time for questions.
You don't even own it. Would you own a crowdfunding platform?
We have time for questions.
I got one for you, actually. I've got a collab. No, they have one.
Thank you first for the great content. It was amazing. I learned quite a few things. So my question is in regards to, let's go with the same hypothetical example of yours.
Oh, really?
And
come on, man, come up with a better.
In this case, this person needs to create a distribution channel. For that, he would need strategic alliances, let's say, with bigger companies and a few of them. What kind of structure do you think he has to build that, to develop that strategic alliances so he could fulfill the promise of distribution channel? Should you go with the example of crowdfunding? Should you go with a good, highly disciplined...
Should have a good product, good products, good sales. The rest will sort itself out, to Bill's point. I mean, at the end of the day, I think what you have to be cautious about is strategic alliances don't necessarily mean sales. And one should always think about why strategic alliances are occurring. And I mean, Roger can speak to some of this in the context of acquisition and whatnot. But at the end of the day, a distribution channel is an economically driven model. That means everybody in the cycle is sort of making their piece. And if that works, then that wheel spins. But if there's a piece in there that's operating on the strategic alliance, if I trade something for something and something for something, you're missing a few spokes and hubs.
In other words, you have to have revenue at the end of the day.
You have to have, sorry?
Revenue.
Yeah, I mean, so the reality is for most entrepreneurs, your first distribution channel is almost always got to be direct. And I mean, ideally in a business model sense, that's stupid. I mean, because it's not, direct is not scalable, direct is expensive, blah, blah, blah. But you've got to assume that nobody else is going to embrace your product until you prove that you can sell it at scale. And that's true I think it's true now, even consumer as well as certainly enterprise B2B. It's really hard to get a third party, ISV, VAR, whatever, to sell your B2B product until you have proven and have a replicable sales model for selling it direct, and they know that that works. So don't jump too soon into, when you start your company, don't assume that, okay, then I've developed a product, have a product that works, and now I got to go find a distributor. Because you want to start that process, but you cannot assume you're going to get a distributor. You're going to have to figure out a way to get directly to your customers for some period of time until you can develop a channel.
And the advantage of that, frankly, is you end up.
Will never go into distribution. No, the distribution model's broken. I mean, you can look at FreshBooks or other software companies that have just completely gone direct, and many of them, that's their future.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
It's a discussion.
Well, at first, I'd like to thank the panel for coming out tonight. You guys gave a great talk. I definitely learned a lot. I'm with the company. We're the drone company, so we build drones for fire departments.
Cool.
And one thing that we're committed to is donating some of our profits to companies or organizations that help fire victims. So when we were filing our corporate form, we were kind of thinking, hey, it'd be cool is if we could do this B Corporation. It's kind of a new thing, lets you be a nonprofit with a for-profit attitude. But there didn't seem to actually be a lot of benefits to that. So I guess my question for you guys is, if a B Corporation comes around, how do you analyze that, or how does that affect their ability to get funded?
We make you become a Delaware C Corporation.
Well, hold on. So let me, just so we're all on the same page, there's now this relatively new thing. You call it a B Corporation, which you mean it's either what we call a flexible purpose corporation or a benefit corporation. And the benefit and the advantage of that is that a company, a typical C Corporation, can only consider maximizing shareholder wealth. That's all the directors are allowed to do when they make decisions. These type of corporations can have other considerations. In fact, they may be compelled to have other considerations. Doing something good for the environment, some charitable cause, maximizing employee, wealth or something like that. And so I have clients who are very social, they do socially conscious investing, and they really like those sort of corporations. And they tell me, I don't know, you tell me, they tell me that they actually do pretty well. Corporations that have these mixed sort of purposes. I don't know if the investment community has caught up that generally yet, but that's what I've heard, that they have been doing pretty well.
Yeah, so we're one of my favorite children, although I love all my children equally. One of my favorite children is a company called Delight Design. And Delight Design builds solar rechargeable lighting for developing world people who are not on the grid. I mean, and they absolutely, day one, their vision was to make the world a better place for a lot of poor people who are not on the grid. And so when we first met them, and they told us the story, and we said, well, that's great, because but I gotta tell you, this is one of those social do-good, philanthropic venture kind of things, and and these guys, they came over the table at us, and they grabbed us by the lapels, and they said, you don't get it. If we're gonna change the lives of 2 billion people on the planet, we have to build a big, scalable, profitable, global corporation. And we go, oh, wow, we love these guys. So the point of the story is, if being a benefits corporation or beneficial corporation or a double bottom line corporation is integrated tightly into the success of your business model, your value creation, the meaning of your company, if it's integral to your success, that's great. It is even better. But if you just, because you're all nice guys and you feel, we should dedicate some percentage of our profits to charity, if we don't see an integral value creation aspect to you being a B corporation, then we're going to be nervous. Sure. But if we see it as a strategic decision that is going to make you a more successful company, then that's a lever you've got that a lot of companies don't have. So that's the way we would parse this.
So like if in the dog example, if they were donating to like the Humane Society, because perhaps their customers would like to, make purchases from them.
Right, and so if as a result of that, the Humane Society, which has 25 million members, or whatever it has, will actively promote their solution to all of their members, then we go, good move, guys.
Right.
Well,
yeah.
Right.
Make a lot of money and give a bunch of it away. I mean, that's just really efficient. No, seriously.
You know who does that really well? Like I went and got a cup of coffee yesterday at Pete's, and you can't walk into Pete's without them just kind of bombarding you with, it's free trade, beans, and and it's sustainable this, and it's careful that. And you feel like you're saving the world just getting a cup of coffee. I mean, what a great way to integrate a social purpose into your brand.
Without a B. Without a B.
Right, as opposed to Dunkin' Donuts, you walk into Dunkin' Donuts, you don't feel good about whatever.
Thank you.
Feel fat.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Actually, I have the same question, the B corporation. But you answered almost, talk about it. My simple question now is, I want to set up a B corporation, but my team is not ready. But my MVP is ready. I want to get running. So can I go to Roger to register a corporation, or I have to wait for my team to build up? Thank you.
So is the question, you don't have a corporation yet, but you have a team? Is that what you said?
I don't have a team.
You don't have a team?
It's just you.
Sorry?
You built the product by yourself.
Yes.
It's just you.
Okay. Just myself.
Hire a bunch of guys.
Yeah, just go ahead and do it.
Do it.
So I don't have to register a corporation, just do it?
Well, no. Yeah, technically, you can register whenever you want.
I see.
That's not. But the question is, what's your highest priority right now? It's easy, simple to do the registration. There's some compliance issue if you become a B. So there is some overhead. Okay. There's some compliance overhead with a B that I don't know how burdensome.
Are you gonna is there a social angle to your business? I mean, are you going to give something away, or are you? I mean,
it's kind of service, or let's say simple, build another Facebook.
So there's a legal answer and there's a practical business answer. The legal answer is you want to have the liability shield of a corporation as soon as you're conducting any activity that might get you in trouble. And you want a corporation as soon as you're developing IP so it can hold that. And as soon as you're divvying up equity, so you got a vehicle to do that. The practical business answer here might be that you might want to wait a little bit until you really have a better plan. I think that's what you're saying.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, so I came tonight with a partner of mine, and we're trying to embark on a new little product effort. But my question generally concerns risk. And it's kind of an interesting topic that a lot of people don't understand, but you guys are the money guys and probably understand it a little better than most. I think a lot of people who are investing money look at some of the big noticeable reference points. There's the Google, there's the Amazon. But it's also to put those investments in context. They grew out of an era where there were spectacular failures.
Sure, we'll buy that.
Is it possible that this process you described tonight, going from family, seed, angel, then possibly VC, is just a complete kind of corruption of the whole idea of investing in new ideas and technology, where that Amazon or that Google, that thing that Malcolm Gladwell would call the outlier, has a possibility
You
of
missed the
happening.
whole thing, man. You missed the whole thing. What we're doing is making it easier for every one of those companies to understand how the pieces fit together. Having that runway of different investors at different stages allow the largest amount of startups and largest amount of ideas to get surfaced and funded in some capacity. And then ultimately, capitalism, market conditions take over, and the best rise to the top.
But if you
And
look
what all of this is just a better opportunity. So as opposed to this making it harder for startups, it makes it easier.
But if you look at the era where Google grew out of, Google.
We were there. I mean,
yeah, I was there.
Do you remember
too. I was there too.
Plaxo? Anybody remember Plaxo?
November 1998. They got 100K from some guy who had helped start Netscape. By March, I think John Doerr put 25 million into it. Okay, that's like a 5-month spread. Now you tell me where that's happened lately.
Well, I think the times have changed, but we.
It does happen a lot. It does happen a lot lately.
But see, my view here. I'm sorry, but my view is.
Last comment, please.
No, these are. I mean, it happens. I mean, I met a company a few weeks ago, an Australian professor, who was working on intelligent conversational, avatars. Who investor walked into his lab, gave him $7 million. Boom. Didn't even have a business plan, wasn't even planning on starting a company, gave him $7 million. Nobody gave Larry and Sergey $7 million while they were still in the lab. So this still happens around the world, but these are false positives. These are the exception to what's going on out there. And what F is pointing out is there's this Darwinian process that is sort of brutal, but is nevertheless sort of the best we've come up thus far, with a way of surfacing innovation that can make a difference.
My name is Daniel Craig, and thank you for coming out to today's talk and helping us newbies kind of avoid the failures. So my scenario to you is, you have a company and they have a few paying customers, they've been bootstrapped, and they have a product. So do they fall into angel, or do they fall into early stage VC? Does it just depend on who they go to, or?
You just told us you were wearing a shirt and asked us what color it was, and we can't see you.
Okay.
So at the end of the day,
Yeah.
the answer to that is really the scale question,
Okay.
right? And that's really what we're going to be looking for. All those great data points you mentioned are super important to us, and those are all hugely important and beneficial, and congrats. Getting a product building something that people will give you money for is epic. So that's like the best part. The question is, are there enough people out there that are going to give you $20 billion or some massive amount of money for that product over time? Because that's what we're looking for. Because you've got to remember, our economics require us to move much quicker. So our lifespan as a VC fund is 10 years, but our investment cycle is typically 3 to 5 years. So just like a football game, if this company, let's say, becomes wildly successful on the 10th year and first day, that's like scoring the touchdown 2 seconds after the buzzer. So for us, we need that speed and scale. Bill mentioned speed, other people talked about it. We need speed and scale. So that's what you have to look at. Can this become really big? Can it become really big fast? And if you've already proved some of those data points, and then you can figure those other two pieces out, come see us, because that's why we come and do these speaking gigs, man.
Cool. See you in a month.
All right.
Thank you.
That's the spirit.
How's it going, guys? Thanks so much for coming out. Like, we were, my company, I have two more other co-founders. We were one of the few people who were actually smart enough to actually listen to Roger. We're actually, working with Roger. So we were those guys you were talking about earlier. We first got together and we got into the cave and we're like, oh, this is great, this, that, and the other. And then we finally learned about like the lean startup model and stuff. And so we've been going out and refining everything. Now we're to the point where we're very confident that we have something very special and we've done our friends and family seed round up to a certain point, but now we're to a point where we need to grow. So my question is, what best practices are around gaining those warm market introduction to angels, seed round, venture capitalists, et cetera, et cetera?
Who wants to do it? You guys want to do it, or
You want to do it, or?
Okay. So, best practices around getting warm introductions. You know the answer to this, right? I mean, you've been in the real world, right? So it is the process of tracking down investors is simply sales 101, right? And so, but most entrepreneurs, because selling their equity in a company is so abstract compared to either on the one hand doing a job interview or on the other hand selling a product, I can get my hands around what that means, but selling equity, it's such a strange and bizarre thing that most entrepreneurs kind of, their heads fuzz up because they don't understand this strange world of venture capital. But it's just sales 101. Okay. And so what it means is, be crystal clear about your value proposition. Just be crystal clear what you do and how you create value for whom, and start spreading that word, because in your network you've got people who know people. So, you are, the great thing about just the fact that you're physically here in Silicon Valley, you are 1 degree of separation from almost everybody you care about in terms of, having access to people who know people. And so get the word out and ask. Just ask nicely, but ask and get, and start finding these connections that will lead you to the right people. But too many entrepreneurs, they shotgun broadcast. You got to do it. You got to go one by one and, ask people individually. Nobody responds well to shotgun broadcasting. So, and then you get 3, 4, 5 people who are willing to help, who know some people, who will make some introductions. Once you get there, you're golden. Because once you start working those connections, then you've got access conceivably to an almost infinite number of connections if you know how to work your connections.
Thank you.
Yeah, let me add 2 more data points. First, to Bill's point, but I'm going to add something to it. It's drip marketing. Because you've got to remember, when you show up in our office, you're like the 100th guy in line, meaning that my desk is already stacked. Now, you might have the best deal on my desk, but I've got to work my way through that stack. So you need to drip market to me. So by the time I get around to getting to your deck, you've stayed top of mind, given me updates. We want to see you grow. The average cycle time is about 6 months. Okay? Roger is a great first step. I mean, that's awesome. He sends us a deal. We're going to look at a deal. And you need accounting, and I'm sure David's team's going to do the same thing. You need every service provider is a network. Every angel, Han just said, is a network, and that's what you have to drive. And then drip market us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, my name is Lou, and I'm working as email security startup. And I think my company has a new way to establish trust relationship in certificates. And I'd like to file a patent. However, after investigating the cost of patent, which is very high, so my question is, how much value does a patent add to my startup in terms of seeking investment? And what's the best time to file a patent?
Actually, I think it's a question for you. I mean, from my standpoint, I think patents are really, it kind of depends on the company and the business, of course, but I think they're really important because if you're either relying on patent or you're relying on trade secret protection. And trade secret protection is a rather tenuous thing. I mean, typically we say when your employees walk out the door, your trade secrets walk out with them. So it's a risky thing, but a patent That's a federal registration. That's got a lot. It's a lot more solid. And I think the investors like patents. So tell me that, investors.
Yeah, so we love patents, but what we like is just like we've talked about, this is all a big process, and it's really important to understand why. You can file a provisional patent for under $2,000. I think it's $1,500 these days. $20. For the first filing, right? Yeah, to file yourself. Yeah. And you can, the reason we like that is not only, Roger's super correct. I mean, you wouldn't let your neighbor borrow your car without insurance, and you're going to go, as Bill said, and open your hearts up to all of us. So you're going to tell everybody your story, and you need protection. The second, and I was going to use some fairly sketchy, analogies there, but I'm not. The second piece of that story is when you go through the process of, not only filing a provisional, but going through a patent process, you're doing something more important, which is the patent searching. Because the biggest thing you're going to run into is prior art and other patents that are out there. And you don't want to go out and spend 3 years building the most awesome email program ever and find out that someone who worked at Cisco in 1998 has 100% of the IP in that category, and you're never going to muscle in. So the patent's good for us, but it's really good for you. And great entrepreneurs we've seen just, I know one startup that was not that large that had an in-house patent person because they were looking and trying to find the cracks between these critical patents in their area and being able to fill it in and creating strategy. So you need to really, do it for yourself to protect yourself. Do it for yourself to protect yourself, and then do it so that we're going to take an interest and we'll be protected when we invest.
Okay,
Thank you.
Okay.
Last question.
Hi, my name is Zvi Ackler. I'm the CEO of Optimizing Mind. We help those that create AI cover their ass to make sure they know what their AI is going to do, and if it makes a mistake, to be able to explain why it made that mistake. So we ran into some expenses with foreign patents. They can get very expensive. And I wanted to get an intuition from you guys. What are the potential pitfalls? One angel investor suggested, well, they'll pay for that foreign patent, but they want half ownership. What sort of ramifications might that have in the future in terms of investments and so on?
You know what? Yeah. Like, very few markets outside of the U.S. and China at this point really matter to most of us because Europe is super disparate. The size of market isn't there. I mean, being able to guarantee patent protection in Kazakhstan just doesn't mean anything to us, okay? Pick the big ones, get it right? And more importantly, make sure you're not infringing on someone else's patent because that's as more important. There's a bunch of startups. I know a great startup from Tel Aviv that all they do is patent challenging. That you're going to pop your idea and they're going to give you a heat map of every single patent that's all around your space. And if you don't have some clear space there, that's a lot easy. That's really tough. But you could spend. I know companies spend hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars a year maintaining these international patents, and there's just not that much value there, frankly. Unless you're a biotech startup with like a drug or something that you're going to go sell in Uzbekistan.
So you're suggesting just to let go that patent and not to patent in Europe? No.
In key markets where you're going to do business, maintain your patent. Make sure that You want me to shut up? Yeah. No. Go. No. He's the last guy.
Okay. Yeah. It's just. I mean, there are two separate issues here, right? I mean, so the first issue is what's the right strategy in terms of where you should patent, and that's F's point. And then the second issue is how do you pay for it? And that's what I was reacting to, the idea that somebody said, if I pay for it, I own it, right?
Half of it or something.
Right. That's, you run away from that person. Yeah. That is just not clean in terms of the structure of your company, because the next investor who comes in is going to look at what happened and say, first of all, who is this obnoxious investor who struck that deal? And second of all, how stupid are you for taking it, right? So that's the problem. And that's how you negotiate this guy away from it and say, no. Put the money in the company, let the company own the patent. That makes sense. You win, we have a future. Otherwise, we're dead. So, that's the way you negotiate that. So.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for coming, and please give our panelists a hand.
Jerry, thank you for those scenarios.
Thank you, Jerry.
Yeah.
All right.
Great job.
Let's go home. Wait.
Panel, you guys are outstanding. I think that I can say that everyone got some practical advice tonight. Something that you can take away from here and act on. And that's one of the things I really, really want to encourage you. As you get information, don't just sort of just take it back and put it away in your back pocket or something and file it away. Use it. Figure out how you're going to take that information and add value to your company, add value to what you're trying to accomplish. So, gentlemen, again, thank you for this an outstanding job. We are at that point that you've been waiting for, some of you, which is raffle time. So I'm going to have Rob Lowe come up, and he's going to have a few items that he's going to raffle off.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for your patience. Those of you that stuck around, some of you will be handsomely rewarded. So first off, we have the classic book, Dead on Arrival, by Roger Royce, How to Avoid the Legal Mistakes That Could Kill Your Startup. You can even get it signed by the man himself. The winner is Zvi Adler. Come on down.
All right. Now you can pay for the patent.
Perfect, right?
Okay, next up we have the classic Idea to IPO coffee mug. And the winner is
There you go.
Daniel Craig, Uniboy.
Well, that was pretty good.
Wow, this is looking nice.
All right. So next up we have the classic Idea to IPO jacket. This is what it looks like. And the winner is
We lost our drummer.
Wikijobs Suresha
Hey.
Jagwani. Okay, so here's something really nice. A free pass to Idea to IPO proprietary events for May of 2017.
Nice.
And the winner is Surface for Mindfulness, Balaji Thurganum. Gift cards. Okay, well now we're getting some really good stuff.
Cash.
What is it? No cash tonight. A Visa gift card for $25. Who could use a Visa gift card for $25? I guess nobody needs it. Oh, okay. I was gonna like pass if you guys. The winner is 49ers Stadium Management Company, Samantha Fallon. Come on down. Go Niners. All right, one more $25 Visa gift card. Does anyone could use this?
What is it?
Okay. $25.
It's another $5.
Bill could use it. Bill doesn't need it.
I can use it. I can use it.
And the winner is
I've actually been to one of these where VC put it.
Smart Alerts, Samarji Chalabra. Come on down.
It looks so bad. Yeah. I always like it when like the French guys.
That's it for the raffle. Robert?
All right.
All right.
Take us on, buddy.
Robert has another contest. Sit down, ladies and gentlemen. Don't go anywhere.
So,
They should be giving us.
we are going to be building a co-maker space, an incubator in the building that's two over. So one building's getting ready to come down in the next couple of years, and we'll be building that space for entrepreneur community here in San Mateo. So the survey you filled out helps us get an idea about what to go in that space, give us some ideas about what we're going to try to be doing there. So all of you that filled out the survey, you're in the drawing. And
the prize is what?
$25 gift certificate.
Oh, I get to draw? Okay.
All right.
For the, where's the drum? Okay.
So Cheetah Katua.
This is public.
All right. Your prize is another $25 Visa gift card.
Thank you for filling out the survey.
I appreciate it. And that is our program for the evening. I'm sure the panelists might be here for a few minutes if you got a question as they exit the stage. But thank you all for coming. Drive home safely and hope to see you again at another event.